Ladies and gentlemen, I need you to help settle a debate for me. I think we can all agree that land destruction is toxic, frustrating, nobody wants to play against it. But my friend tries to make the contention that playing a strip mine or like a wasteland does not count as toxic land destruction because he also is having to sacrifice a land in order to do that land destruction. So he feels like it's completely fair and balanced. Now, what I would say to that is, first of all, no, you're still touching my lands. And secondly, in his deck, he's also playing a Crucible of Worlds. So if you have the ability to just tap, sacrifice that, destroy my land, and then with your Crucible of Worlds, play this land back from the battlefield, or from the graveyard, and get back to the battlefield, you are just burning through lands. To me, it's a no-brainer. I feel like my friend is completely off base. I want you to let me know in the comments below what, make some sense of this. Let me know. Maybe I'm the crazy one. Maybe this doesn't count as toxic Rule 0 land destruction, but I think that he is in the wrong here. And the crazy part is that as toxic as that combo is, a strip mine and a Crucible of Worlds, that's not even the most toxic part of this deck. This deck is helmed by one of the most annoying commanders I have ever played against. Like I said, this is my friend's deck. He built this toxic wasteland, and I hate it. I hate playing against it, but if you build it, you are going to drive all of your opponents nuts. Do with that what you will. But the commander for this deck is Deadpool trading card. So this is a secret layer card that came out a little while ago. There was a lot of hype around it at the time, and it was well founded. Playing against this deck, it's just, you don't want to put out any of your best creatures because Deadpool says when he enters, you may exchange this text box with this text box and another creature's text box. So at the it has the ability, it says at the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 3 life, and then you can pay 3, sacrifice this creature, each other player draws a card. So you are taking the text box of one of your opponent's best creatures, and you are slapping that pile of hot garbage onto it instead. So your opponent could have something that is giving them constant value. I mean, it could be their commander, it could be whatever their best creature is, and they lose that, and instead they get this steaming pile of crap. It's just, you're losing life. In order to stop losing that life, you have to pay mana, get rid of your creature, and everybody else gets to draw a card. That's awful. That is objectively horrible. And when it comes to stealing cards, there are a lot of different ways to steal your opponent's cards and stuff. This is just disrespectful. This is stealing it and giving them the middle finger at the same time. So, like I said, this is an incredibly toxic deck. He packed it with all sorts of toxic things, and there are quite a few more controversial and toxic things that we will get into as we go along. But first, every deck has to have a good mana base, so he has a few, basic lands, great, love them. But then he has a lot of non-basic lands, and again, like I said, he has those burn lands in there. He also has things like Field of Ruin. There is another land destruction piece. So he has a lot of ways of, if stealing your creatures with your commander isn't bad enough, why don't you just burn off your opponent's lands? Because that's totally fine. And then as far as the rest of the ramp goes, we have an Arcane Signet. Obviously adds 1 mana of your color. A Soul Ring, a card that I always say should be in every deck. Busted, 2 mana for 1. Mind Stone, 2 mana. My Soul Ring is 1 mana for 2. A Mind Stone is 2 mana for 1, so not as good. But a Cursed Mirror can enter as a copy of something, but then also produces 1. Brass Bounty, this is a temporary ramp, but when you play it for each land, you get to create a treasure token. That's pretty nice. Revel in Riches. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, you create a treasure token, and at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 10 or more treasure tokens, you win the game. This is a busted card. Revel in Riches. It is a very easy alternate win con, which I do like. You can ramp and have an alternate win con the same way, especially if you have something like Brass Bounty, which, again, when you play it, you're going to get treasures for all of those lands. That could get you to the 10 just like that. So that is a quick and easy way. You're going to be destroying a lot of your opponent's creatures. That's another way to win the game right there. And then last, we have a Rakdos Signet. So that is our ramp package. And once we get ramp aside, this deck is a very aggro deck. It is burning through people. And speaking of burning through people, he has a Master of Cruelties, First Strike, Death Touch. It can only attack alone, and when it attacks a player and isn't blocked, their life total gets reduced down to 1. So, ridiculous. This card is ridiculous. This could take an opponent could be playing a life gain deck. They could be at 60 some life, and if you're able to get this through with a Rogue's Passage, which he does have in his land base, now suddenly their life is reduced down to 1. Coincidentally, if that happens to you and your life gets reduced down to 1 and old Deadpool gets traded off to you, at the start of your turn you're dead. You're losing the 3 life because of Deadpool. It's bonkers, gross, disgusting. I hate playing against stuff like that. Wound Reflection. At the beginning of each end step, each opponent loses life equal to the life they lost that turn. Solid card. This deck is, like I said, going to be burning burning your opponents, doing a lot of constant damage to them. So now that is doubling the damage that's being done. Razorkin Needlehead has First Strike, great for attacking. But whenever an opponent draws a card, it deals 1 damage to them. So that's nice for constantly pinging your opponents. Karavek the Merciless, whenever an opponent casts a spell, deals damage equal to the spell's converted mana cost to any target. That's solid for more destruction, or more damage. But speaking of more damage, this, especially paired with a Wound Reflection, could be game over. So I talked about Heartless Hagitsu in my last deck review. Should be a link up there. This is probably the OG and one of the best make your opponents lose a lot of life, because when you tap it, it deals damage to each player equal to half that player's life total. So again, if you have a Wound Reflection, then after you tap that, they lose half their life. You go to your end step, and all your opponents are losing the other half of their life. So if they were at an even amount of life, if they are at 40, they got dropped down to 20, Wound Reflection takes out that last 20. GG's for them. Vile Smasher the Fierce. Whenever you cast your first spell, each turn, choose an opponent at random, deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to that player or planeswalker, so kind of like the Karavek the Merciless, except it's a little bit more limited. You can only do it once a turn. Saw in Half is a great card. I talked about this, again, I believe in the last video as well. Very different deck builds, but this card is really nice for being able to take a creature that has a really good ETB or has a really good static effect that you want more of, and then you can destroy it and then have 2 copies of that same card on the battlefield. You're getting twice the value there. Speaking of creatures that, again, you may want 2 of, you got Archfiend of Despair. It's a giant demon, with flying, but the main thing is your opponents can't gain life. So again, if an opponent has like a life gain deck or is somehow gaining themselves life, it's done. Opponents can't gain life. And then at the beginning of each end step, your opponent loses life equal to the life that player lost this turn. So similar to like a wound reflection. Solid works well again with like that, with being able to tap and take half an opponent's life. Speaking of taking a heck of a lot of life, you got a card like Peer into the Abyss. For 7 mana, target opponent draws cards equal to half the number of cards in their library, and then loses half their life rounded up each time. Depending on how much life an opponent has, again, you're going to want it to be like, if they're at an even number of life and you hit them with that and you got like your Archfiend of Despair or you got a Wound Reflection on the battlefield, this is a game ender. It's disgusting. It is toxic. That is going to take out an opponent just playing that. Treasure Chest gives you a couple different options as far as like creating treasure tokens, which again, that can help your alternate wincon that we covered earlier. But if you roll a 20, you can search your library for a card. If it's an artifact card, put it onto the battlefield. So that, again, you could search for your alternate wincon. You can search for a couple different things, but solid value right there. Havoc Festival. This, again, as somebody who has played against this deck, playing against Havoc Festival is ridiculous. The only advantage to it is that it'll speed up the game so exponentially fast, you will be able to get out of it sooner. So instead of having to sit around for hours just watching Deadpool take away your best stuff, now you can have this thing over in 2 turns. Players can't gain life. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player loses half of his or her life rounded up. If you have a Wound Reflection on the battlefield, I keep saying this, but this is about the 4th or 5th way that if you have a Wound Reflection, your opponents are going to be cooked. The Speed Demon. This is just a solid draw engine, as well as being a 5/5 flying trampler, going to hit pretty hard. It does the whole speed mechanic, so it goes up 1 each turn, and you'll be able to draw 1 more card depending on your speed. Giant Cindermaw. Again, players can't gain life. Stop people from being able to rebuild from all the damage that you're doing. Vampire Nighthawk, kind of a classic card. Flying, Death Touch, Lifelink. Living Lightning. When it dies, return target instant or sorcery card from the graveyard to your hand. And then Dualcaster Mage. When it enters the battlefield, copy target instant or sorcery. From there, we of course have to get more copies of our commander, because just the few that we had right there were not enough. First and foremost, we have Electro Duplicate. It says create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, except it has haste at the beginning of the next end step. You can sacrifice it. One of the first card that we should cover in this section, which is probably the strongest card in this deck as far as actually pairing with your commander, is going to be the Master Multiplied. It says the legend rule doesn't apply to creature tokens you control. So if you create a token copy of your commander, it will be able to stay on the battlefield because he is taking care of the legend rule problem. And then it also says triggered abilities you control can't cause you to sacrifice or exile creature tokens you control. So if you have something that says like do it, but you have to sacrifice it at the end step, you no longer have to do that. So this is an incredibly strong and important part of this deck. Heat Shimmer. Put a token into play that's a copy of target creature, has haste, and the turn removed permanent from the game. Right, kind of covered that. So again, what we're doing here is with our Deadpool, we're going to make more and more copies of our Deadpool and steal more and more copies of our opponent's things, and they're left with just a pile of crap that says, yeah, lose 3 life. Splinter Twin, 4 mana enchantment. Enchanted creature has put a token that's a copy of this creature onto the battlefield. Token has haste, exile, beginning of next end step. So for that 4 mana, you're going to staple that on top of your Deadpool, and then you can just tap him and create more copies. Delina, Wild Mage. When it attacks, choose target creature you control and roll a d20. You're obviously going to be choosing your commander. It says create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of that creature, except it's not legendary. And then if you roll 15 through 20, create one of those tokens and you get a roll again. So potentially you could create 2, 3, you could create multiple tokens there. Excuse me. Feldhide Spirit Binder. Again, all these are pretty much doing the same things, just with saying it in different ways. It says whenever it becomes untapped, you may pay 2. If you do put a token onto the battlefield, that's a copy of another target creature, except it's an enchantment in addition to its other types. Gains haste, exile it at the beginning of the next end step. Mirage Phalanx, Soulbound. So you're going to soulbind it to your commander, and then as long as it is paired with another creature, each of those creatures has the beginning of combat on your turn. Create a token that's a copy of this creature, except it has haste and loses Soulbound. Exile at the next combat. So again, as long as you have this tied up with your commander, you're going to be able to create more copies of your commander. Mimic Vat. This is whenever a non-token creature dies, you may exile that card. If you do, return each other card exiled with Mimic Vat to its owner's graveyard, so you can only have one thing exiled with it at a time. But you can pay 3, tap, create a token that's a copy of a card, exile with Mimic Vat. It gains haste, exile at the beginning of the next end step. Flame Rush Rider. When Flame Rush Rider attacks, create a token that's a copy of another target attacking creature that's tapped and attacking, exile the token at the end of combat. There is so many of these. We have, again, they're all doing the same thing. Flame Shadow Conjuring. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 1, create a token, or create a copy, rather. Ortheon, Hero of Lavabrink. Pay 2. Create a token that's a copy of another target creature. That's great. But if that's not enough for you, you can pay 9 and create 5 tokens that are copies of another target creature. Because that's just what you need. You need 5 copies of freaking Deadpool. Twin Flame. 2 mana, spell costs 3 more to cast for each target beyond the first, but choose any number of target creatures you control and then create copies of them. You're really probably just choosing your commander. Javis, the Troublemaker, 4 mana, pay 1, discard a card, create a token that's a copy of another target creature. So that's how we can create like 1 billion copies of our commander, get him out, and just mess with all of your opponent's stuff. Speaking of messing with your opponent's stuff, we have quite a bit of destruction in this deck. We have a Vandal Blast, a classic destruction card, Molten Collapse. You can destroy a creature, planeswalker, or destroy target non-creature permanent with mana value 1 or less, so some flexibility there. Deadly Rollick, you can exile target creature. Blasphemous Act, again, another classic. You can tell that he really doubled down on the Deadpool theme. This is probably one of the coolest alternate arts for this card. I personally am a huge fan of alternate arts. Anytime I can get like a cool alternate art, I think that they are worth getting. Bedevil, Bedevil, however you say it. Destroy target artifact or creature or planeswalker. Again, nice to have that flexibility. Dreadbore, 2 mana, destroy target creature or planeswalker. Hurl through hell, exile target creature, and then you can cast that creature. Terminate, 2 mana, destroy target creature. It can't be regenerated. This is again, like I said, this deck has so much destruction. It has so much stealing. If he's not stealing your best things, he's destroying your best things. It's frustrating, and as you sacrifice or lose your best things, he has ways of getting value off of that as well too, with things like Mayhem Devil. Whenever a player sacrifices a permanent, it deals 1 damage to any target. So again, in order to get rid of the Deadpool, which is causing you to lose a 3 life, you have to pay 3 and sacrifice it, and each player draws a card. So now, not only are you having to pay to give your opponents cards, but it's also doing 1 damage to you as well too when you do that. And then there's also Yahini, Undying Partisan. It has haste, and whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and then you can sacrifice another creature to make it indestructible. But that's going to become a huge, huge hitter in our deck with how many cards your opponents are going to be sacrificing or just dying. We also want to have ways of bringing stuff back from our graveyard if an opponent takes out one of the cards that we really like. So Blood for Bones is a really strong as far as it returns a card from the graveyard to the battlefield and a card from the graveyard to your hand. So double value there. Kaya's Ghost Form. This is a nice card. Enchant creature or planeswalker you control. Whenever enchanted permanent dies or is put into exile, return that card to the battlefield under your control. Similarly, we have Feign Death. Until end of turn, target creature gains. When this creature dies, returns to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. Same thing with Undying Malice. Until end of turn, target creature gains. When this creature dies, turn it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control with a +1/+1 counter. Or there's Cauldron of Souls tap. Choose any number of target creatures. Each of those creatures gains Persist until end of turn. When it dies, if it had no -1/-1 counters on it, return to the battlefield with a -1/-1 counter on it. So that is multiple ways of if your opponents try to deal with your commander, if they try to destroy him, take him out, that's some protection. And not just your commander, you really can use it on anything, but that is some ways to be like, oh, nope, he's not actually dead. He is right back on the battlefield. And when he comes back on the battlefield, you are then also able to reuse his ability. You're able to then be like, okay, I'm now stealing this thing's ability, and you get this crappy lose 3 life. This really I should have covered this in the making copies, but it is so strong, and probably one of the strongest ways of doing it in this deck. But Helm of the Host. At the beginning of combat on your turn, create a token that's a copy of equipped creature, except that token isn't legendary, so you don't have to worry about legendary rule. And then the token gains haste. So you are slowly pumping out more and more copies of your commander, and it's more and more ways to be able to take your opponent's best things. Swiftfoot Boots. This is a classic card. Protect your commander and give him haste. Sword of Hearth and Home. Equipped creature gets +2/+2, has protection from green and white. Cool, nice little buff. But then whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, exile up to one target creature you own. Then search your library for basic land card. Put both cards onto the battlefield under your control, then shuffle. So this is a way to blink your commander. When it deals combat damage, you are getting to ramp, which is nice. In red-black, you don't have a lot of ramp, but you're ramping with that, and you're blinking your commander, and being able to take another one of your opponent's things. Speaking of blinking your commander, we have Conjurer's Closet. At the beginning of your end step, you may exile target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. Again, just getting another instant of your commander's ability. Voyager Staff, not as repeatable, but you can pay 1 to lay it, 2 to sacrifice it, and then exile it, bring it back. Golden Argosy, it's a vehicle, but whenever it attacks, you get to exile the creature you crewed with it, return it to the battlefield. So again, blinking your Deadpool. Then we have Resurrection Orb. Equipped creature has lifelink. This is kind of nice. Again, with all the burning and damage we're doing, some of it is going to hit us as well too. Like the Heartless Haigetsu that we have covered. It does cause you to lose half your life as well. So having ways to regain some of that life, like this Resurrection Orb, is solid. And whenever a equipped creature dies, return that card to the battlefield. So again, just bring your commander right back. Blade of Selves. Equipped creature has Myriad. Again, super cool alternate art here. But with that Myriad, whenever you attack an opponent with your Deadpool, you then get to create extra copies of your Deadpool to attack your opponents with. Death Mantle. Equipped creature gets +2/+2, has Intimidate, and is a black zombie. And whenever a non-token creature is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, you may pay 4. If you do, turn that card to the battlefield and attach the mantle to it. And our final card is Basilisk Collar, which again gives the creature either lifelink or death touch. We already know why the lifelink is so strong. So this deck, again, I want to know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. If you see an opponent playing this, how long is it going to take you to rage quit? I can tell you personally, I played this deck once and I'm like, I hate this. I never want to deal with this ever again. I have seen him pop off, win within the first few turns because of all the destruction. And again, tell him, let him know in the comments below that doing his Wastelands and Crucible of Worlds loop, doing that over and over again, that's toxic, it's no good, it's absolutely awful, and it should not be allowed to exist. If you do like super toxic, disgusting deck builds like this, though, you are going to want to subscribe, ring the bell notification, because we are bringing decks like this to you guys every single week. You are going to piss off all your friends, you're going to make enemies, but you're going to have a damn good time doing it. So make sure you like, subscribe, we already covered all that. Share this with your friends, and we'll see you guys next week.